Welcome to this next instalment of the little mini series that I've made, where I'm looking at the various lenses that are popular and used among street photographers. Last time we looked at the 50mm, and in this episode what we're going to do is we're going to knock it up a notch and we're looking at the 85mm, a common yet divisive lens among street photographers. So what we're going to do is, much like last time, we're going to go out, take some photos, and in between I'll discuss the pros and cons of the 85mm, why I've used it, why some people love it, why some people hate it. Let's get started this, shall we? What I will say, first and foremost, or well actually two things I will say. If I do seem a little bit rusty with this lens, I do apologise. This is actually, admittedly, the first time I've used this lens properly in quite some time. And secondly, if my face does appear a bit shiny, I do apologise. It's currently just touching 30 degrees in Glasgow today. It's absolutely scorching. So hopefully, I won't pass out from heat exhaustion today. But the response from the first video we made with the 50mm was actually really positive. Got some really good feedback on that, so I thought let's continue that series. And the 85mm, obviously, all you have to do is go on YouTube and you could see infinite videos on people saying it's the best lens possible or the best lens they've ever used, and there's other photographers saying they'll never touch it again, and actually some will say 85mm is actually ruining your street photography. Now, of course, these opinions are all very subjective, and I wouldn't want to kind of sway that. What I will do for the first part of this video, we'll take photos and I'll try and look at it as objectively as I can and use it to the best advantage. Obviously, with any lens there are going to be drawbacks, there's going to be pros and cons to every sort of lens, but I'll try and give it as fair a run as possible. And I'll save my own personal opinions for at the end, and hopefully just use the majority of this video for you to kind of decide and just see what you think of the 85mm and see if it's the right lens for you. So as I said, it is very sunny today, so we won't need a high ISO, so I've put that down to 200, and I'll probably actually just leave it there for now, actually, as long as we're still in the sun. I've kept it starting at about shutter speed 1000, and the F is actually, so the 85mm I have doesn't have an aperture ring. You have to control it with this dial here, which is fine. So what I'll do is, you can see just out there are two cranes that are kind of like crisscrossing each other. I'll take a photo of that. That could just be a good way of, it's not going to be anything award winning, but it'll at least kind of get us started in a way. To put that photo on the screen, like I said, it's nothing special, nothing really that we'll really be looking back on in amazement, but just to kind of get us started. So in terms of gear today, I am using actually the 85mm supplied by Viltrox. At the time when I got this lens, several years ago now actually, it was the only lens at the time that was compatible with my Fujifilm X-T2. Obviously that was going back some years now, I haven't checked since, so I don't know if things have changed or you can get a different lens, a different brand of lens for the Fujifilm. But it's not too bad actually, when we're talking about the actual dimensions of it, it's actually pretty decent. Obviously, much like any kind of 85mm lens, due to its actual size and the kind of the make of it, one of the drawbacks of it is that by being so robust and strong, it is actually quite heavy, and certainly more heavier than the 50mm lens that we reviewed last time, and other street lenses like the 35 or the 28. Quite like, this dividing little line around the harsh shadows and the sunlight. That guy's about to walk through the shop, I can get him in it. So just walk through. So I got a few shots there put on the screen. I quite like, even though like I've said in previous videos, just because you have the harsh dividedness of it, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to make it difficult for you. I think we can get another one here. I got a kind of silhouette shot there with that one. I've come to it from this side, which I don't know, I think this is going to have the same impact. Let's see what I can get. Might have managed to get a good shot there or not, but I actually preferred it in the first kind of shot where it's kind of more at an angle, whereas this is kind of more dead on. One thing that is certainly quite challenging about the 85mm, if you've not picked it up for a while, which I haven't, as I said earlier, I do find myself, I have to kind of pick out my moments from quite a far distance away. I need to kind of pick my balance and distance to be away from it, from using things like the 35 and the 50mm for so long, certainly more kind of shorter focal length. I've kind of got used to the idea that I can come quite close up to my subjects without actually having to be so far away, so that's kind of something I'm needing to get used to. So I always quite like, there's a big kind of level crossing just up at the end of that road there. Now normally I would be right up there with my 35 or 50mm, but because we're so far away I need to kind of stay far back and take a kind of shot of it. Quite like how the sun is hitting the buildings. It creates a bit of kind of contrast, but I might need to kind of be brave while there's no traffic coming and stand in the middle of the road. Okay, got what we came for, let's get off the road. So put those photos up on the screen. I think what it does best, it kind of showcases one of the advantages and what makes the 85mm so common. It gives you that really compression effect. Really kind of like, say, we're standing quite far away from it. It's managed to like scrunch and push all the buildings together. So that's one of the things that really makes this lens so popular, is that kind of compression effect, which especially is helpful if you're in a big city like we're in today. So I've now come a little bit further up the street. So beforehand we kind of got a big context of these buildings all put together. Now what I'm going to do is I'm focusing on that white building. It will help us get a more kind of detailed kind of shot of it, because I quite like it from at least this angle, from where the sun is hitting it. I'll show you behind here. So it's definitely, again, just like I've said in my previous videos, just kind of work with what the light is giving you and kind of struggling to focus two things at one time. Yeah, work with what the light is giving you, use that to create kind of like, you know, like contrast and shadows. Just use it to your advantage. So you can see over there the corner building, you see the light is hitting from this side and that side is in complete shade. I quite like that. So just off camera I managed to get a few shots. There's another guy standing there, I'll try and get him in it. So I quite like how it's like when you look at the back of the camera, when they're walking into the sun they're in complete sunlight, but then when they go into shade they just complete into absolute shroud of darkness, which I just quite like the contrast of it. When it comes to 85mm and telephoto lenses in general for street photography, there's one man in particular I always think about, and that's a man named Saul Leiter. I think his body of work, when you look at it, it really proved and demonstrated that he was able to move away from the conventional street photography lenses or prime lenses, such as an 85, sort of a 35 or 50mm I should say. He was able to show that it was possible to at least move away from the shorter focal length and get something a bit more punched in, longer lens. That, however, being the case, I do think, at least when I, like, in my opinion, when I look at his body of work, I kind of feel he mastered the art of the 35, 50mm first before he moved on to the 85mm. I feel like he was able to show, like, develop the eye for building a good frame and a good photo before he moved on to that. This here could be another chance to showcase the compression value of the 85mm. You can see here on the left we have all these buildings lined up. So if I can just get a shot, it will showcase them compressing against each other. What's quite helpful is the fact if you look at them, the buildings are shorter and get progressively taller as you go back. So it's kind of just, again, a classic kind of big city photo to showcase the potential and capabilities of the 85mm. You can see up here we have these guys working on this kind of top building here. They have this kind of like mobile cherry picker here. 50mm may or may not do it. I'll have to have a try here. We may not get the full arm in the shot, but at least get most of it. It's kind of like the reflection of it up against the building. It's sort of works, sort of doesn't. One thing I will say with the Viltrox 85 is it is very kind of like, from the shots look very saturated, which I'm not really a fan of, but inevitably, however, much with every lens, there is going to be some drawbacks, and one of the big drawbacks when it comes to 85 is its actual focal length. Makes it a bit of a disadvantage. So if you're in a city like I am right now, like Glasgow streets are very tight and compact, sometimes 85mm doesn't really help you if you want to kind of get shots from across the street, or if you're operating in a tight location. I'll show you an example of that right now. So here's an example of this focal length disadvantage. So you have like the Gallery Modern Art here. Now I quite like the building. I like how the sun is hitting the side of the columns here. It's going all the way up there to a spiral. So I might think, right, I want to take a photo of that whole building. But if I show you the back of the camera here, because the 85 is just so punched in, like there, I can only get the columns. If I come up to the very top, look, I can only get the spiral. I can't actually get the full building in shot. It's a bit of a disadvantage considering, you know, it's like the building is here, it'd be great for like maybe kind of something a bit more wide. Okay, maybe a 50 obviously wouldn't do, a 35 probably wouldn't either. So not saying like the 85 is the only lens that can do it, but it certainly is something that can be a bit of a hindrance. Here's a better use of how I need to make use of the focal length of the 85. You can see just over there, there's this kind of guy sitting there at the corner. Kind of columns there just behind him makes for interesting photo. Not too bad, but you see where the problem is. Obviously I couldn't take a photo. Like if I wanted to try and incorporate the whole building from maybe here or maybe just across the street, I'd need a wider angle lens. So 85, you kind of just have to kind of work with that tight compression when you're working in a really kind of tight environment like this. Quite like this setup. We have this kind of like little walkway that goes through here, and this kind of end of it kind of arches that way. I think if I can try, it's really punched in, so it's quite difficult to work with in a way. Another drawback of the 85 is from a practicality standpoint. As you can tell, that it is quite a bulky and quite a chunky lens, so it can weigh you down because it is quite heavy, certainly substantially heavier than its wider partners of the 50 and 35 and 28. So yeah, from again, just to look at it from objectively, that is a drawback of the 85, and is like, it's not really something that bothers me personally. Was it something that affected me when I used it? You do sort of get used to it, but just to kind of look at it from that perspective, like that is certainly something that goes against it. Another situation here where I quite like the shadows are created here amongst the walkways. Just before I turned the camera on, a guy walked through there and I got a shot. It wasn't really anything major. The problem is to kind of capture him and most of the environment which I was looking for, I had to take a step back, but you can see just there's these kind of like bike poles and other bits of clutter like these bollards kind of got in the way of the shot and ruined it, so it wasn't really anything to really shout about. Try again, we've got these guys coming through the shot now. And our man there got in the way. Didn't really pan out the way I'd hoped. Hoped it would at least. This time I've come a bit closer, see if we can get anything better. Marginally better. I think coming closer actually did help for that one actually, rather than try and be away. So again, I like the kind of contrast between the shadow and the light. That's actually quite good. It kind of works really well. So we've talked about the benefits, the 85 talked about the drawbacks of it, which every lens is going to have that. 85 is no different. However, like I said at the start of the video, the 85 definitely, when I did little bits of research for this video, and again, if anybody just types in 85mm into YouTube, you'll find it is so divided among street photographers, certainly more than any other lens out there, in my opinion. So obviously, look, nobody is necessarily wrong. Everybody has just tailored those videos and their opinions to their own body of work. Woman standing there, hopefully if I can make a silhouette out of this. I'm a little bit underexposed, I can change the aperture. I might get it. Oh, that's touch and go, that one. I'm not too sure if I got it. I might have to like kind of do a lot like cropping and adjusting in Lightroom to see if I got that one properly. Maybe see, but there's some guys there sitting in that pub up against the window. Hold on, I'm trying to get a shot of that. Try and expose, because see the window kind of arches it. Really arches it, frames it, so I should say. So again, just expose for the highlights. I'll actually show you what I'm doing here. Pretty good actually. Quite like that, it's pretty good actually. So here's a chance to show off a really another commentary, the 85mm, and that is isolation. So many 85mm like mine, as you can see, goes down to f1.8. Some go down as low as 1.4, so it helps you kind of like isolate a subject and create that really nice kind of bokeh effect. And we have this sprite can here, which I swear God I did not put that there. I'm really against littering. So if I just kind of like zone in on it, it'll draw that into focus quite well actually. So I think 85 is like what makes it really good. It's really sharp as well. Hold on, let me try again. Because it's really bright. I'm trying to like adjust for this. To try and come at it for another angle, I'll come over here. I can get a little bit lower. Can I isolate it with a better background? You can see I'll put it on the screen again. It's just like it draws completely the sprite can into focus and everything else into blurs out the rest of the background, which again, common favourite trait of people who use this type of lens, so it's just an added benefit. Now, if I was to offer my personal opinion of the 85mm, and again, strictly my own personal opinion, for me, it's not the lens that I would go to create the portfolio, create the pictures that I want to create. When you look at my current work, a lot of my photos is that I like to incorporate the environment to create a sense of scale, to create a bit of context with the photo. Like I have like a subject, mostly a person in the shot, and I'll like incorporate the environment into that, and that's something where a lens like a 50 and a 35 is better. The 85 for me, and again only my personal opinion, just doesn't do that for me anymore. It doesn't really offer me that kind of flexibility and that kind of dynamic range, or that kind of like versatility. So wrap it up there. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've got something out of this. If you're someone who shares the same opinion as me that the 85 was something you like to use but not anymore, please let me know. But if you're someone who disagrees, if you're someone who still thinks the 85 is a great lens for street photography, like I said, it's a very divisive lens, people either love it or hate it like Marmite, let me know again in the comments. That'll wrap up the second edition of this series. Next time we'll be looking at the 35mm lens, my go-to lens. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks again ever so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. I will catch up again soon.